They are so powerful, they have a country named after them. They are the Saud family of Saudi Arabia.
I'm a Saudi, you're a Saudi, he's or she is a Saudi means you belong to that family.
Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship managed by a democracy. We're really talking about a core group of maybe 15 to 30 princes that are really controlling the final decision on everything.
A kingdom the size of Western Europe, with a quarter of the world's known oil deposits, riches that could tip the balance of global history. But with an increasingly radical populace and a resource that won't last forever, is the sun setting on the House of Saud.
It's a remarkable family in that it's held on to a fairly fragile country.
They all know their survival depends upon staying together and staying in power.
And each day brings further evidence that the ways we use energy strengthen our adversaries and threaten our planet.
Western leaders point to Middle Eastern oil as one of the most pressing problems facing their countries. And to many, one nation is synonymous with foreign oil: Saudi Arabia. It was called the day the West woke up. The fact that 15 of the 19 terrorists on September 11, 2001 were Saudi nationals surprised some. Saudi Arabia has been a close ally of both Europe and the United States, but this seemingly worldly group of princes and kings has had a long-lasting alliance with a branch of Islam that has little fondness for the West.
The Saudi royal family funded the extremists for years. I mean, we're talking about going back to the 30s, and back to independence.
So these people really control the media today. And therefore, they control the schools, and they have great access to propagating their ideas.
In 2005, the country crowned a new monarch, King Abdullah. He promised a new era of reforms.
Our opinion inside the CIA was that Abdullah was more capable than many of the other princes. I mean, this is good news for Saudi Arabia.
He's making an alliance more with the liberals in order to push the kingdom in the 21st century.
A delicate balance, but some fear the fundamentalists in Saudi Arabia may turn and bite the hand that feeds them.
Saudi Arabia finally woke up and said to itself, if we continue to support radical factions, extremist Wahhabi factions, we ourselves are going to collapse.
The dynasty ruling Saudi Arabia traces its roots to a desert past and to a visionary tribal leader from the mid-18th century.
Mohammed ibn Saud went to rule the country and the tribes of Arabia, the majority of the Arabian Peninsula. They formed an alliance where the Wahhabis or Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab will be in charge of religion.
The Wahhabists followed the teachings of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. A Wahhab and his followers reviled other religions and especially adherents to other branches of Islam, like the Shia, who honor figures other than the original prophet, Muhammad.
Abdul Wahhab felt that Islam had strayed from its true beliefs, so he wanted to go back to the original beliefs of the Quran and what had been taught by Muhammad.
The Wahhabis are a very strongly missionary-oriented sect. They believe that Wahhabi Islam will save Islam.
They had this fierce religious ideology, the willingness on the part of the Ikhwan, the Brotherhood as they were called, to die in battle. Almost a willingness, a wish to die in battle.
With the help of the puritanical Wahhabist holy warriors, the Saud clan conquered land throughout the Arabian Peninsula. In 1924, 5 generations later, Abdulaziz bin Rahman al Saud, also known as Ibn Saud, finally took over the holiest sites in Islam, Mecca and Medina.
Ibn Saud is often seen as an Arabian Lawrence of Arabia, but he was better than Lawrence because he actually fought.
Very tall, very big, had a lot of charisma and a lot of guts. I mean, he did a lot of, attacks in the middle of the night, completely desperate type of military attacks of other positions, which no one would have done. I mean, he was a man of great courage.
He united the area's warring Bedouin tribes through both violence and intricate alliances.
Talking around the campfires, the Bedouin liked to joke about Ibn Saud. They said he's got two swords, a sword of steel, the one with which he conquered, and the sword of flesh, which he used once he'd conquered, and would marry the chief daughters of the tribe that he'd conquered, and thus bring that tribe physically into the union of the Saudi family.
In 1932, he proclaimed this conglomeration of tribes between the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf his family's kingdom, Saudi Arabia, the Arabia of the Sauds. This patriarch and his 45 sons would rule into the next century in partnership with his religious allies. Wahhabi clerics were given wide control of the educational and legal systems.
In the early 20s, Abdulaziz al-Saud was able to really take the ideology of Wahhabism, and we might consider today that's the ideology of militant Islam, and to really make it into a political force in order to pull the tribes of Saudi Arabia together.
And it's an Islam that we look at as abhorrent because it involves cutting people's heads off, enslaving women, and on and on and on, all the things, the popular cliches we know about.
The kingdom survived, largely from revenues charged to the Muslims from around the world who make the annual pilgrimage, or Hajj, to Saudi Arabia's holy sites.
He charged Muslims to make the Hajj to Mecca. They had to pay a fee to be allowed into Saudi Arabia, and that's how he lived, frugally.
But then, in the midst of the Great Depression, a new source of revenue presented itself, one that would change world history. Oil had been found in nearby Iraq, Iran, and Bahrain.
He was able to have the vision to know what he did not know. He knew that he did not know anything about oil, so he was not going to go look for it himself. He knew it existed, he knew it could bring a lot of money to the kingdom, so he hired the oil company of Southern California, SoCal, to look for oil, and eventually, it took them a long time, but they found oil.
This precursor to today's Saudi oil behemoth, Aramco, gave the king $170,000 for the rights to drill. A drop compared to the many billions that the resource would one day produce for the royal family.
This was a personal license to drill oil that Ibn Saud had granted in his lands. It was his money. And to this day, there is a sense in which the House of Saud consider the oil to be their own personal property.
Along with news of our fuel oil shortages comes the fresh warning that our known oil reserves will be exhausted in 10 years at the current rate.
Toward the end of World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt recognized the importance of Saudi oil to the United States and invited the king aboard the USS Quincy to officially open diplomatic relations between the countries. The desert monarch and the patrician from New York seemed to be so different, but Roosevelt scored points when he gave the aging warrior king his spare wheelchair.
American firms have opened new fields abroad. Of these, one of the biggest and most important is Saudi Arabia. Beneath its blistering sands lies a near...
With global shipping now safe again and a major customer secured, oil production resumed, and so did the flow of money. The king wanted to modernize, no small feat when his ideological partners, the Wahhabis, outlawed innovations developed after the time of Muhammad.
He wanted to attain modernity for his people while keeping his society as it was in the earliest days of Islam. This is a tall order, but it's a formula that he perfected and that enabled Saudi Arabia to maintain its puritanical religion and at the same time accept modernity, that has come through to this day, I believe. And I think that was it showed amazing vision on his part.
Ibn Saud arranged a special demonstration of how the telephone could work. And he had it call up a distant town. And he said to one religious sheikh, well, why don't you speak on the phone and see what you can hear at the other end? And at the other end, Ibn Saud had stationed another religious sheikh. And so when the religious saw that this work of the devil could in fact be used to make their own communications easier, they changed their mind.
As the battle-scarred king aged and his severe arthritis increased, his kingdom seemed poised for either great wealth or oblivion. By the early 1950s, people around the world wondered, could the new nation last longer than its charismatic founder? Who would be the next king?
The system of succession in Europe, in royalty, it tends to go from father to son. And if there's no son, we name a woman and then you have a queen. It doesn't work like this in a Bedouin system. In a Bedouin system, the family gets together and tries to find out who the most important leader is. Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship managed by a democracy. In other words, the royal family works solely by consensus. And any decision in the royal family has to be okayed by everyone.
With the wrong successor, the fledgling country's vast wealth could be squandered, and the kingdom could quickly return to its desert roots. The kingdom of Saudi Arabia was propelled from a group of desert tribes to a modern nation. This happened in just a few decades at the hands of its founding king, known in the West as Ibn Saud. But in his waning years, Ibn Saud faced a problem.
In the last years of his life, Ibn Saud relied very strongly on his two eldest surviving sons, Saud and Faisal. But most people who knew the two brothers knew that the second brother, Faisal, was the one who really had it in his head, the one who had the political ability. And so, before he died, Ibn Saud is said to have brought the two brothers together and asked that although one would obviously become king, that was Saud, and the younger one, Faisal, would become crown prince, they should see themselves as a partnership.